Warm greetings and heartfelt salutations to Relationships and Trust Support Group. Welcome to our community. If you're new here, we encourage you to subscribe to our channel and express your support for this video by giving it a thumbs up. In a mere heartbeat, we discover the flame that fuels our desire to craft even more stories. Please express your gratitude for this video, and now, let us begin our story. Never did I foresee that I would find myself in such a predicament. In a charming little town, I devoted my early years to cultivating dreams of a life brimming with simplicity and happiness. In the vibrant days of our youth, I pledged my love to my college sweetheart, Jack, a bond crafted in the glow of our mutual dreams and ambitions, even with our limited belongings. The connection we nurtured was invaluable, and that was more than enough. That was the conclusion I had drawn. Looking back, the signs of what was to come have revealed themselves to me. In that instant, I found myself unable to comprehend it. As we stepped into the charming little house we had decided to rent, I was introduced to Mr. Morgan, our landlord. The abode may have been devoid of splendor, yet it encapsulated the very essence of our connection. It exuded a delightful warmth, featured a quaint garden, and boasted a charming little backyard that truly captured my heart. As we stepped into this new chapter of our lives, an exhilarating wave of anticipation washed over Jack and me. Mr. Morgan was a gentleman of considerable age, just embarking on the journey of his 6th decade. His face glowed with warmth, a smile consistently gracing his features during our meetings. He was the kind of landlord who would make the occasional visit to confirm that everything was in order with tea. He housed over time. I noticed Mr. Whitaker visiting to ensure everything was in order, and I appreciated his attention to detail. He displayed an impressive level of courtesy, asking if we needed anything, and continually participating in casual dialogue about the changes the neighborhood had experienced over the years. In that moment, it scarcely made an impression on my thoughts. He was simply a kind, elderly gentleman. Slowly, the current started to change. As Jack's work obligations drew him away from home more often, I found myself increasingly alone in the serene solitude of our house. In those fleeting moments, I began to see Mr. Morgan through a different lens. He began to appear unannounced with growing regularity, sometimes to scrutinize the house, other times merely to partake in conversation. At first, I regarded it as harmless. In the end, he bore the title of our landlord. As the days passed, I began to notice a delicate shift in the cadence of our conversations. On a tranquil afternoon, while I nurtured the blooms in my backyard garden, Mr. Morgan arrived for an unanticipated visit. His visits had become more frequent, and although I welcomed his company, there lingered an unsettling aura surrounding his arrivals that I found difficult to dismiss. His kindness enveloped the room, a warm blanket against the chill of uncertainty. Yet Jackie, that gentle facade. An intensity flickered in his gaze, igniting a disquiet within me. On that particular afternoon, he tarried more than he usually did. Our dialogue wandered through the nuances of the weather, paused to admire the garden, and eventually plunged into the complexities of existence itself. In those ephemeral instances, I began to notice a unique fascination in his manner. Is there a sense of joy that you discover within this place? On that day, he asked, his eyes fixed on me, evoking a profound sense of vulnerability. My reply was shrouded in uncertainty. Indeed, a wave of happiness washed over me in Jack's presence, yet an unmistakable gap started to emerge, especially with his long hours at work. There were instances when solitude wrapped around me, even with him in the house, yet I hesitated to articulate that reality to Mr. Morgan. Not in plain sight. I gave a smile and a nod, trying to brush the thought aside, but Mr. Morgan was relentless, unwilling to let it slip away. He noted that there are moments when one might easily underestimate the importance of a confidant, of feeling the authentic presence of someone who is genuinely listening. Words slipped through my fingers, but the way he spoke them sent a chilling shiver down my spine. His words lingered in the air, resonating long after he had left. I brushed it aside, persuading myself that it was nothing more than a minor interaction. As Mr. Morgan continued to visit, I started to notice subtle shifts in his behavior. His compliments, once playful and unburdened, began to carry a weight I had not anticipated. He would comment on my appearance, observing the care I took in presenting myself and the diligent attention I devoted to maintaining the house. At first, I viewed his gestures as simple acts of kindness, but it soon became clear that he possessed an awareness of subtleties that eluded the notice of others. On a certain evening, Jack was notably missing, occupied with a business trip. On a serene evening, I settled into the couch, absorbed in the pages of a book, when unexpectedly the doorbell rang. Taken aback by the unforeseen arrival, I hesitated briefly before replying. As I pushed the door ajar, there stood Mr. Morgan, radiating a warm smile. "I find myself in the vicinity," he remarked, "so I thought I would stop by and ensure that all was well." I bestowed a polite smile, stepping back just enough to grant him passage. His unexpected arrivals had settled into a familiar pattern, prompting little more than a fleeting consideration from me. He stepped into the living room, and our dialogue began. Just as it always did on this particular occasion, an unusual tension lingered in the air. There was a certain intensity in his gaze that left me feeling uneasy. It was nothing overt, just a fleeting look, a lingering gaze. Yet it was enough to set my heart racing wildly. In the course of our dialogue, Mr. Morgan drew closer to me than was his usual custom. The space that had once kept us apart started to shrink, and the weight of his presence became ever more palpable. I remember laughing nervously at his remarks, trying to brush aside the growing discomfort that nestled within my heart. I comforted myself with the notion that his actions were simply expressions of camaraderie, persuading myself that my responses were overblown. Yet, as if sensing my discomfort, Mr. Morgan leaned in slightly and placed his hand gently on the arm of the couch. "You know," he remarked, "it's a rare thing to come across someone like you, a person who truly listens, a person who sincerely cares." At first glance, the words seemed innocuous, but an unsettling quality lingered in his tone, a particular inflection that sent a shiver racing down my spine. An overwhelming desire to withdraw surged within me, a need to voice my unease. Yet I chose to remain mute. Instead, I released a nervous laugh and pulled my legs up to my chest, trying to create a barrier between us, even if it was just a physical one. Morgan noted the shift in my posture, and for a brief instant, an unvoiced tension lingered in the atmosphere surrounding us. He looked at me, his eyes soft, but there remained a sharp intensity that I could not ignore. "I didn't mean to make you uncomfortable," he murmured, his voice scarcely rising above a whisper. "Your gratitude is genuinely cherished, Ella. You embody a truly distinctive and extraordinary spirit." The way he spoke my name rendered me momentarily speechless. My heart pounded fiercely in my chest, rendering me speechless. I longed to speak, to break the heavy stillness that enveloped us, but the perfect words slipped through my fingers. In that moment, I was captivated and rendered motionless by the sheer gravity of time. Before I could even speak, Mr. Morgan stood up. With a smile gracing his lips once more, he commented, "I suppose I should allow you to return to your evening." Yet an oddity lingered in the smile, an elusive quality that slipped through my grasp of understanding. "I wanted to connect and inquire about your well-being." I nodded, my throat dry, and watched him as he left the house. With the soft click of the door closing behind him, I exhaled a breath I hadn't known I was holding. I sat still, my eyes locked on the door, while time appeared to elongate endlessly. Wrestling with the perplexing occurrences that had just transpired, never had I encountered such a deep and unsettling conflict within myself. A part of me longed to share my inner turmoil with Jack, but another part was caught in the web of shame, paralyzed by the fear of how he might perceive me. I never meant to stir up any trouble. I sought to steer clear of sowing any seeds of uncertainty in his thoughts, or even more perilously, inciting his wrath. As I continued to reflect, it became ever more apparent that I could no longer ignore the feelings Mr. Morgan was igniting within me. A sense of wrongness enveloped me, and I found no inclination to nurture it. An unsettling intuition persisted, hinting that his visits masked deeper truths he opted to keep hidden. What was I destined to accomplish? As the days unfolded, Mr. Morgan's visits became more and more routine. Each time I returned, the same unsettling tide of discomfort and unease enveloped me anew. I tried to brush it aside, but it became ever more challenging to ignore. He had a mysterious allure that quickened my pulse, leaving me bewildered by its source. I recognized the importance of being careful, knowing that I could not let situations slip out of my grasp. Yet, I felt that Jack at the surface, a subtle transformation was quietly taking shape. I had no inkling of the profound depths that lay in wait for me. As the days transformed into weeks, the tension between Mr. Morgan and me grew ever more palpable. I had not yet confided in Jack about the strange encounters I had with our landlord. A part of my essence quivered at the notion that he might fail to understand my intentions or, even more terrifyingly, that he could react with fury and disillusionment. Ultimately, I was simply trying to offer a gesture of goodwill, wasn't I? It was nothing more than a light exchange of words. Is that all there is? Then, I recited that mantra to myself each time Mr. Morgan appeared at the house unannounced, striving to quell the growing unease that was slowly taking hold. Nevertheless, the discomfort had transformed into an inescapable reality that I could no longer ignore. The memory of Mr. Morgan remained vivid, especially the moment our eyes locked and as our conversation continued. There was a subtle shift in the space between us during that one extraordinary visit. It seemed he was extending his hand, striving to create a connection that went beyond the typical confines of neighborly or landlord-tenant interactions. That moment kept resurfacing in my mind, each recollection amplifying the tension within me. On a tranquil Tuesday evening, I found myself alone in the kitchen, carefully slicing vegetables in anticipation of dinner. Cooking had always been a source of joy for me. However, tonight it felt more like a burden than a refuge. My thoughts drifted to far-off lands, an uneasy feeling tugging at my consciousness, as though the very atmosphere was alive with the anticipation of transformation. As I started to dust the chicken with spices, the familiar sound of the doorbell resonated in the atmosphere. My heart danced within my chest. As I peered through the kitchen window, I caught sight of Mr. Morgan at the door, his well-known warm smile illuminating his features. Days had slipped by since I last beheld him, and the relief ought to have enveloped me. An unsettling knot coiled tightly in my stomach. Instead, with a towel in hand, I dried my hands, took a deep breath, and made my way toward the door. "Good evening, Ella," Mr. Morgan said with a bright tone as I opened the door. "I hope I'm not interrupting any current affairs." "Absolutely not," I replied, managing to conjure a smile. I stepped aside to allow him passage, and he entered with a nonchalance that implied it was the most mundane action conceivable. He glanced around swiftly, his eyes briefly settling on the kitchen where I'd been immersed in the task of preparing dinner. "The aroma in here is delightful," he commented, his gaze resting on the dish I was crafting. I received the compliment with a courteous nod, a wave of uncertainty washing over me as I pondered my response. "It's just a simple dinner, nothing particularly special." "You always say that," Mr. Morgan chuckled, "but you have a remarkable talent for transforming the simplest things into something truly extraordinary." The compliment was agreeable, I suppose, but it bore a distinct significance when it originated from him. It was a different kind of admiration than what I had garnered from friends, or even from Jack. His gaze carried a weight, as if he glimpsed something within me that went beyond the simple worries of food or a roof over my head. A tide of discomfort surged within me once again, yet I resolved to push the feeling away. "Thank you," I replied, brushing it aside with a casual wave of my hand. "Do you need anything? It seems you have arrived with a question in mind, am I correct?" Mr. Morgan's expression shifted, ever so slightly. He seemed to hesitate briefly before responding. "I would appreciate the opportunity to engage in a short discussion. A considerable period has elapsed since we last partook in a substantial conversation." To my utter surprise, our meetings had consistently been characterized by courteous interactions. Yet we had never paused to delve into a more profound conversation. I had noticed his regular appearances nearby, but I never expected him to seek a deeper dialogue. A wave of anxiety washed over me, but I nodded nonetheless. "Certainly, we can pause for a moment to share some time together." I led him into the living room, subtly gesturing toward the couch, inviting him to settle in and find his comfort. I sat across from him, nestled in the familiar chair that had become my designated perch during those evenings when Jack and I would immerse ourselves in our television traditions. A tense silence blanketed the room until Mr. Morgan shattered the quiet, his voice imbued with a gravity I had never witnessed in him prior to this moment. He commenced his journey at a relaxed tempo. "Of late, I have been immersed in profound contemplation regarding the essence of existence and the inexorable changes that manifest as time progresses. It is all too easy to find oneself caught in the monotonous patterns of everyday existence, drifting away from the genuine essence of what truly matters." Uncertainty hung in the air as I contemplated the path he was choosing to follow. With thoughtful deliberation, I acknowledged your viewpoint. In the midst of life's tumult, remaining connected to what genuinely holds significance can prove to be a formidable task. Morgan tilted his head, his eyes searching deep into mine. Exactly, yet it is just as important to take a moment to pause and reflect, making certain that we are truly engaging with life instead of simply going through the motions of a routine. His words bore a disquieting gravity, rendering me speechless in the face of how to respond. My thoughts were shrouded in uncertainty as I contemplated his insinuation, and a fragment of my being hesitated to reveal the truth. Ella, he whispered softly, leaning in just a fraction closer to her. It's challenging to express, yet from our very first encounter, an unmistakable bond has formed between us. A distinctive connection that remains ever present in my mind. Time and again, I find myself pondering our conversations, the way you carry yourself in them. I've noticed the thoughtful care you put into the smallest of tasks, and my respect for you is profound. A sudden constriction seized my throat, stifling my breath. His words enveloped the listener in a soft embrace, while simultaneously echoing the profound significance of a newfound truth. The way he spoke those words struck my heart with a jolt, though it was anything but a pleasant feeling. An unexpected tide of confinement surged within me, casting doubt on my forthcoming actions. My thoughts flowed, seeking the perfect words, anything that could alleviate the oppressive tension now palpable in the atmosphere. I find myself at a loss for words, I murmured, my voice scarcely lifting above a whisper. I appreciate your thoughtful sentiments, Mr. Morgan, but I must convey that I am contentedly married. My heart is devoted to a husband I hold in the highest regard. He seemed completely untroubled by my words. He settled back in his chair, his gaze fixed on me for a fleeting instant, his expression an enigma. I understand, he murmured, his voice tinged with a subtle trace of regret. It is my desire to spare you any unease, Ella, but I find myself unable to dismiss the feelings that dwell within me. His words coursed through me, a spark of electricity, awakening every nerve. Though I had heard him express his admiration for me before, this moment carried a unique weight. Within his gaze resided a profound depth, an intensity that conveyed unspoken narratives. A wave of trepidation and uncertainty enveloped me. This had surpassed the boundaries of a simple, casual inquiry from a friendly landlord. It had transformed into a labyrinth of complexity, a realm I realized I was ill-prepared to traverse. I have no intention of creating any discord between you and your husband, Mr. Morgan said, his voice unwavering, yet I can no longer pretend to be indifferent to the undeniable attraction I feel for you. I felt compelled to share my emotions with you. Words slipped through my fingers. I opened my mouth, but the words slipped away from me. I found myself in a precarious situation, caught between the urge to shield him and the necessity of steering clear of false hopes. What path was I intended to follow in this situation? What is the best way to communicate to him that I am married, and have no interest in pursuing anything outside of my relationship with Jack? Finally, I took a deep breath, sensing my heart pounding in my chest. Morgan, I declared with firm resolve. I value your candor, but I must be clear and direct. With you, I stand united in the sacred bond of marriage, wholly devoted to my husband. Your kindness is genuinely valued, however. I feel it is important to clarify that my interest is strictly confined to the parameters of a landlord-tenant relationship. A prolonged stillness enveloped the space, and I caught the flicker of disappointment shimmering in his gaze. He lowered his eyes to his hands, then nodded with a thoughtful precision. I understand. He whispered gently, I sincerely regret if my actions have brought you any unease. That was never my intention. I nodded, a surge of relief washing over me. The tension that had once surrounded us seemed to dissipate, leaving behind a lingering sense of discomfort in its aftermath. The feeling remained, an inescapable burden that nothing could revert to its previous condition. Mr. Morgan's feelings for me would endure, no matter how much I might wish to face them. He stood up, and I followed suit. Thank you for listening, he said, his voice soft, carrying a hint of sadness. I will take my leave now, and wish you a pleasant evening. I wish for you to know that I deeply respect your boundaries. Ella, I merely seek to express my emotions to you. I forced a smile, striving to mask the inner turmoil that persisted. Jack, at the surface, I express my gratitude, Mr. Morgan. I eagerly anticipate the moment our paths intertwine once more. As he crossed the threshold, I paused, my eyes lingering on the emptiness he had vacated. A whirlwind of ideas churned inside me. The events that had just unfolded were utterly beyond my grasp. Even while bound in matrimony to Jack, I began to find myself reflecting on the nature of our conversations and the unexpected bond we had developed. What was unfolding around me? And why did it feel as if the very fabric of my existence was slowly unraveling? I shook my head, attempting to cast away the persistent uncertainties. I found myself drawn to the essence of my life with Jack, yearning to remember the love and devotion we once cherished. Still, an unyielding murmur deep within me hinted that this was just the inception of something far grander. After my conversation with Mr. Morgan, I made a concerted effort to push the entire situation from my mind. My resolve to maintain my relationship with Jack was unwavering, and I had no intention of introducing any further complications with our landlord. Nevertheless, in spite of my attempts to mask my feelings, they remained stubbornly clinging to my heart. The burden of guilt and uncertainty lingered, casting a shadow over my thoughts and plunging me into an endless cycle of doubt regarding the meeting. A few days later, Mr. Morgan reemerged, surprising everyone once again. A sudden wave of unease washed over me as the doorbell's chime pierced the stillness. Despite my sense of unpreparedness for yet another challenging conversation, I recognized the necessity of facing it head-on. I eased the door ajar, endeavoring to uphold my composure. "Salutations, Ella." He greeted me, his voice warm yet deliberate. "I wish to connect and verify that all is well with the house." I tilted my head, summoning a smile. "Everything is in order, Mr. Morgan. Thank you for your question." He seemed to hesitate for a brief moment before continuing on. "I have been contemplating my earlier expressions with great intensity. Causing you any discomfort was never my intention. I recognize your boundaries and I respect them." I found myself compelled to articulate the thoughts swirling within me. I fixed my gaze upon him for a lingering moment, feeling the weight of the words he had spoken. In that moment, it was essential for me to stand my ground. Here, uncertainty found no welcome. "Thank you for your understanding," I replied. "Nevertheless, I feel it is necessary to be clear. I am in a marriage. I am wholly committed to my marriage with Jack, and I shall not allow any distractions to disrupt this bond. While I value the professional relationship we have cultivated, it remains solely within that realm." Morgan's expression softened, though a hint of sadness remained in his eyes. He tilted his head slowly, absorbing my words in quiet contemplation. "I comprehend," he whispered gently. "I sincerely regret if I overstepped any limits." As I took a deep breath, a soothing wave of relief enveloped me. "It is entirely acceptable. I would like to ensure that we are on the same page." He gave a subtle, courteous nod before turning to leave. As he turned to depart, I remained in the threshold, watching his exit, a tempest of feelings churning inside me. A subtle ache resided in my heart, recognizing the importance of this moment, while simultaneously, a wave of gratitude unfurled for the boundaries I had so urgently needed to create. As twilight descended, Jack and I convened at the dinner table, and in that instant, I felt a deep sense of presence that had slipped away from me for far too long. The recent events weighed heavily on my thoughts, yet I recognized the importance of moving forward. I discovered a compelling attraction to the core of what genuinely holds significance. The essence of my family, my steadfast devotion to Jack, and the deep love that intertwined our lives. "Is all well?" Jack asked. Noticing that I appeared more reserved than usual, I presented a smile, striving to dispel the relentless thoughts that clung to my consciousness. Truly, immersed in deep thought, your return home fills my heart with joy. He reciprocated the smile, his hold on my hand becoming a touch firmer. Returning to the familiar embrace of home brings a soothing warmth that wraps around the soul. In that moment, it became clear to me that amidst the tumult and complexities of human emotions, my focus was strikingly sharp. A deep sense of duty urged me to protect the connection I had with Jack. With unwavering resolve, I was determined to allow nothing and no one to hinder our journey, fully cognizant that, despite the obstacles that lay ahead, we would face them together.